Hi, my name is Muna Khan and I've been working in journalism on and off since 1995 and now I'm teaching it in Karachi. I love teaching, but my major gripe is how little literature there is on Pakistan's media history. I refer to books by Zamir Niazi. His last one was Web of Censorship, which was published in 1994, and more recently Fazlur Rahman's memoir was translated from Urdu. Newspaper archives, which are a treasure, have not been digitized. I'm really proud of some of the work I did at the Review in the early 2000s at Dawn, but it's not online, so it's like it didn't happen. I say that because there's so much talk about how curbs on the media are unprecedented, as are attacks on journalists, and I don't blame people for thinking so because they've not been taught or told otherwise. And also, there doesn't really seem to be genuine interest in wanting to find out. To that end, I thought of speaking to journalists who've worked under some very difficult circumstances to get their perspective. I'm doing this largely for students, but also for folks who are interested in the country's media history. Now, it's not part of the main podcast I'm producing, but it's all kind of connected. I chose to start with Ghazi Salahuddin because he worked in Zia's tenure, which is considered one of the darkest periods in history. He was both a columnist at the paper and also a news editor, so he has hands-on experience of what it was like to work with censors. Ghazi Saab himself began his career in English language journalism at The Leader in 1960. It was an afternoon paper. He joined Dawn in 1967 and then left in 1989 to become the first editor of the news, which launched in 1991. Now, I'm giving a very brief introduction because Ghazi Saab has done so much more, including a TV show on books, which I think are his first love. Now, I know that audio is a bit slow to catch on here, but I love the format, so I hope you'll give it a listen over on Buzzsprout or any of the other podcast platforms you listen to. And I'm also posting it on YouTube if you would like to go check it out there. I love talking to Ghazi Saab because he's so knowledgeable and about the world and about Pakistan, and I love how he connects the dots. I'm trying to convince him to publish a book about his column Karachi Diary, which he wrote for a decade, and that alone could teach us all about life in the country back then. He doesn't do TV appearances as a tajziyakar and likes talking to younger people. I'll be inviting him to a class of mine in the fall in Karachi because he does this amazing lecture on Pakistaniyat and who this country is for. It's really eye-opening. If you're interested in attending that, leave me a message and I'll try to connect you. I hope you enjoyed listening to us talk. I really enjoyed my time with him. Thank you. Tell us about the role of the media during the Zia era. That's a very large topic. I thought we could start perhaps with your choosing to court arrest. The time, what led up to that?
That's very interesting. Hum Urdu, Angrezi?
Yes, whichever is.
No, it was on, you know what happened? There was this campaign, people were courting arrest, and there was this feeling that there were not enough volunteers because it had gone on for weeks. And on a particular day, that was 13th of May 1978, there was that famous judgment of कि कोड़े लगाए जाएंगे. 4 journalists were awarded in the military court a sentence of इनको 4 कोड़े. When I learnt about it, and I thought कि ये डराने के लिए कर रहे हैं. So this is the time to court, to join this. So I called Farhad Zaidi, close friend, and I asked him कि ये वक्त है हम कोर्ट अरेस्ट करते हैं. और उसमें जो मेन one of the reasons I was so anxious to do it was my wife. वो कहती थी और लोग जा रहे हैं और मुझे शर्म आती है कि तुम नहीं जा रहे हो. So then we decided that we will do it. बट वी डिड इट इन अ स्लाइटली डिफरेंट वे इन द सेंस कि वो जो कोर्ट अरेस्ट करते थे तो यहाँ से रेल में जाते थे, वो जो एक ट्रेड यूनियन की अपनी वो होती है और कहाँ ठहरेंगे वो उनके बंदोबस्त था। तो मैंने और फराज जैदी ने कहा अब हम जाते हैं। नाउ दिस वाज सम काइंड ऑफ अ प्रोजेक्ट फॉर अस। सो हमारे बीवियों ने सूती कपड़े पे जल्दी से बनवाए कि सूती कपड़े, गर्मी बहुत है। दिस वाज द मंथ ऑफ May. 13th of May was the date on which we decided, and we both flew to Lahore rather than take the train, and stayed with Farhad Zaidi's ancestral home. His parents lived there at that time, not at all. And the drill was that one journalist, one press worker would go to a certain place in a Tonga, and people were gathered there, and they will get down and there will be slogans raised, and they'll be garlanded. The police will come and take them.
Wow.
That's how it was
Wow.
happening every day. So I asked Farhad to go first. I said, let me meet my friends before we go. We don't know when we will come back and return. And so Farhad was the first, and the next day I did it. And it was an experience in the sense it was very hard. It was because initially uh, we were C class, supposed to be C class. Then we got B class, and I think it was just less than 2 weeks when the deal was done and some kind of they were released. Farhad, because he was ahead of me, was sentenced to 6 months RI, and from camp jail was sent to Kot Lakhpat. I, my turn didn't come for that trial. What I experienced in the jail was very interesting. We were supposed to be siyasi, like political prisoners, and political prisoners were VIPs in the jail. I don't remember eating any jail food because there were many political leaders arrested in the jail. When I got B class, I was with Miraj Khalid and these people, Awan of Multan, some others, some Sindhu leaders of the party, Anwar Sajjad, uh, so many others were there, and we used to have long discussions on politics. And
Do you remember if you were scared while courting arrest or while you were there?
that's the issue. That's what is different from now and those times. The real difference is then there were certain rules of the game. We knew we'll do this, this will be the reaction, this is what will happen. एक तो ये था, तो we knew. There are no rules of the game now. दूसरे ये जो enforced disappearances का किस्सा तब नहीं था, ये अब है। और फियर के ना होने का ये था कि एक स्पिरिट थी, एक स्ट्रगल हम कर रहे हैं, हमारा कॉज जो है वो सही है, वी आर फाइटिंग फॉर फ्रीडम ऑफ द मीडिया, फ्रीडम ऑफ द प्रेस, एंड द प्रिंट मीडिया यूज्ड टू बी वेरी इम्पोर्टेंट इन दोस डेज, है ना। वो ये तो इंटरनेट, ये डिजिटल दुनिया तो नहीं थी वो, और इलेक्ट्रॉनिक मीडिया टोटली गवर्नमेंट का था। तो अगर कहीं थोड़ी बहुत इंडिपेंडेंट वॉइसेस थी तो वो प्रिंट मीडिया में थी, और उसमें अंग्रेज़ी का जो मीडिया था वो ज़्यादा एक तरह से यानी पाकिस्तान में इंग्लिश प्रेस और उर्दू प्रेस का फ़र्क वही है कि जो इंग्लैंड में ब्रॉडशीट का और टैबलॉइड का हुआ कि यू वुड गो टू द इंग्लिश न्यूज़पेपर्स के पॉलिसी इश्यूज़ क्या हैं, सीरियस डिबेट किन इश्यूज़ पे हो रही है, कैसे हो रही है। तो एक थी बात, एक इम्पोर्टेंस का भी ख्याल था कि वी आर डूइंग समथिंग मीनिंगफुल, और डर नहीं था, बल्कि प्राइड थी इसमें कि हमने ये किया है।
Because I'm wondering, when you were courting arrest, did you have a lawyer? Did you think
The
that
union,
when
the
the
union were
union?
handling the negotiations and whatever else was happening. The other thing was, until that time, there was a unified union. It had not been bifurcated on ideological lines. It was not bifurcated on other issues, other lines. It was one union. It was during that campaign that Ziaul Haq divided the union, got some haqiqi people out of our ranks. تو وہ بعد میں ہوا تھا جب وائنڈ اپ ہو رہے تھے کچھ ہو رہے تھے لیکن یہ اچھا اینڈ ملٹری کورٹس they would humiliate us. We were handcuffed in the police station and they were asking all those questions: who is supporting you, who is financing you, why are you doing this? Because we were all slightly liberal and left leaning people. تو وہ تھا. اینڈ ہم وہ برداشت کرتے رہے, اس طرح ہوتا رہا. تو وہ ایک فیس تھا. اور وین وی ریٹرن وی ور سو آئی مین پراؤڈ کہیں یا کہیں کہ وی فیلٹ ایز اف وی ہیڈ کنٹریبیوٹیڈ ٹو دا کاز ان سم وے. اور اچھا لگتا تھا کہ ہم ایکٹیو ہیں, ہم زندہ ہیں, ہم کچھ کرنا چاہتے ہیں. دس از ناٹ دا کیس ناؤ. اب لگتا ہے کہ وی آر ہم ایک بند گلی میں آ گئے, آگے کی طرف کچھ نہیں دکھائی دیتا ہے. اس وقت یہ تھا کہ دیر واز ہوپ دیٹ تھنگس ول چینج. کب تک رہے گا یہ؟ حالانکہ دا لا, martial law, it was 10 years, an entire decade. But throughout that decade, the hope for future survived. اور اس میں ہم لوگ ملتے تھے ایک تھوڑا سا, آئی تھنک سوشلی اینڈ انٹلیکچولی وہ ان دنوں کا انوائرمنٹ اب سے بہت اچھا تھا. اٹ میٹرڈ کہ ہم لوگ کہیں مل کے بیٹھ کے بات کر رہے ہیں. ویسی چیزیں اب مجھے نہیں دکھتی. اور اس میں ایک فرق میرے خیال میں یہ بھی تھا کہ اس طرح کی ڈسٹریکشنس نہیں تھی جو اب. اور سوشل میڈیا کا آنا جو ہے وہ مجھے بہت ہی, مجھے لگتا ہے کہ اس نے بہت نقصان پہنچایا ہے میڈیا کو بھی. اور وہ جو پورا ایک طرح کا ایک ایکسپریشن ہوتا ہے سوسائٹی کا, ایک کلیکٹیو ایکسپریشن ہوتا ہے اس کو. کیونکہ جس طرح سے یعنی انٹرنیٹ کے آنے کے بعد نیوز پیپرس کی سرکولیشن پہ اثر پڑا. اور لیکن اور ملکوں میں سیریس یہ جیسے نیوز منتھلیز تو ہم کہیں نہیں ہوتے, ہمارے یہاں ہی ہوتے تھے. نیوز ویکلیز ہیں یا میگزینس ہیں, وہ دے ہیو سروائیوڈ بٹ ناٹ ان پاکستان. اب نیوز لائن اور ہیرلڈ کی کا کیا بدل ہے؟ نیوز لائن اور ہیرلڈ کا جو کنٹریبیوشن ہوتا تھا, جس طرح کی جرنلزم وہ کرتے تھے, ویسی ختم ہو گئی ہمارے ملک سے.
Do you think it reflects that media companies have not thought very far ahead about the future and their businesses?
No, they are not. There is another problem. جو یعنی جو ریڈنگ ہیبٹس نہیں ہیں, اور میرا تو مین جو ہے نا, یعنی سم تھنگ وچ یعنی جو میرا ایک طرح سے کہیں کہ مشن کہیں کچھ کہیں, اینڈ the issue that I want to talk about when I meet young people or when I'm invited to interact with certain groups, وہ یہی ہے کہ بھئی ریڈنگ ہیبٹس ہمارے یہاں اتنی خراب ہیں کہ ہم کچھ نہیں کر سکتے. اس کا اثر ہماری انسٹیٹیوشنس پہ پڑتا ہے, ہماری کلیکٹیو بیہیویئر پہ پڑتا ہے.
But one of the things I wanted you to talk about to help people listening in to get a sense of that time is to talk to us about Karachi Diary, a column that you wrote for
Yes.
about a decade, which wasn't necessarily about Karachi, and how you use that column to sort of circumvent all these censorship
بالکل
rules.
بالکل اس میں تھوڑی سی یعنی چالاکی بھی تھی. It began as some kind of a social scene of literary activities. Quietly and without anybody noticing it, I made it political. ایک کامنٹری جو ہوتی ہے نا سوشل ایشوز پہ اس پہ اور اس میں جو میرا جو کیریئر ہے وہ ٹائم کے حساب سے تو بہت لمبا ہے, اچیومنٹس کوئی ایسے خاص نہیں ہیں,
Don't say that.
لیکن اگر میں اپنے کیریئر میں کسی چیز پر فخر کر سکتا ہوں تو دو ہی چیزیں, ایک تو وہ کراچی ڈائری ہے وچ واز ان دی 80s, اور دوسرا میں نے جیو کتاب
Yes.
کے نام سے جو پروگرام کیا. دے اونلی دیز ٹو تھنگس دیٹ آئی تھنک آئی لو ڈوئنگ. اچھا کراچی ڈائری جو ہوئی وہ ایک تو یہ ہے کہ ان دنوں انگلش پریس میں کوئی اختلافی کالم تھا نہیں. بڑے اچھے اچھے رائٹر بعد میں آئے اور بہت وہ ہوا, ان دنوں نہیں ہوتا تھا, نہیں تھا. اور دوسرے یہ کہ اس ڈان کی اہمیت بہت تھی, یہ ڈان میں کیونکہ ہوتا. اور ایک اور اس کا اسپیکٹ یہ تھا کہ جیسے اب تو انٹرنیٹ پہ سارے اخبار پڑھے جاتے ہیں, ڈان کا ایک اوورسیز ایڈیشن بھی ہوتا تھا which was sent to different embassies, اور وہاں وہ ڈسٹریبیوٹ بھی کرتے تھے. تو وہ کراچی ڈائری اس میں بھی چھپتا تھا. تو وہ آڈینس اتنی بڑی مجھے مل گئی تھی. اور کبھی میں اپنے پرانے کاغذات میں کوئی دیکھتا ہوں تو جو خط ہوتے ہیں اس میں, اچھا پھر یہ ہے کہ وہ ڈیفیکلٹ ٹائم تھا. میں نے آئی یوزڈ ٹو بی رائٹر آف شارٹ اسٹوریز ان اردو. میں نے شروع وہیں سے کیا. یعنی میری جو انگریزی جرنلزم میں ہے نا, یہ ایک اور جو میری انورٹڈ اسنوبری ہے وہ یہ ہے کہ آئی ہیو ناٹ بین ٹو یونیورسٹی.
Yes.
آئی ایم سیلف ٹاٹ ان
Yes.
دیٹ سینس.
Yes. Yes.
تو انگریزی میں نے خود سیکھی کتابیں پڑھ کے. تو اردو از مائی فورتے. اردو میں پوئٹری, تو وہ جو بٹوین دا لائنس کہنے کی بات ہوتی ہے نا, اس کو میں نے بہت یوز کیا انڈائریکٹ. دوسری ایک اور چیز ہے کہ آئی واز ان ڈان اینڈ فار سم ایئرس ڈیورنگ دی 80s آئی واز دا نیوز ایڈیٹر. سو اور وہاں ایک جو ضیاء الحق کے زمانے میں پریس کو کنٹرول وغیرہ کرنے کا جو تھا نا, تو اس میں ایک سسٹم یہ تھا ایڈوائس کا. ایوری ڈے somebody from the information department would call you or send a press note or something to advise you on what not to print. So I knew کہ کن چیزوں کو اوائڈ کرنا ہے, اس ہفتے کس چیز کو اوائڈ کرنا ہے, کون سی چیز نہیں کہنی ہے, کس طرح کہنی ہے. تو وہ کراچی ڈائری میں بہت ہوتا تھا. پھر بھٹو کا جو سارا ڈرام پورا ایک تھا نا, مقدمہ, جیل, ایگزیکیوشن, دیٹ واز اے ویری ایموشنل ٹائم. بلکہ کراچی ڈائری کے حساب سے جو ایک اسٹوری ہے کہ آفٹر بھٹوز ایگزیکیوشن کوئی اس کے 2-2.5 مہینے بعد ہم نے کہا کہ ہم جائیں گڑی خدا بخشش. سابقہ بھی تھیں ہم اور میرا چھوٹا بھائی, اس طرح اور فیملی کائنڈ آف تھنگ. تو ہم نے ڈرائیو کیا وہاں تک ان اے کار دیٹ واز ناٹ ایئر کنڈیشن, ان دونوں شاید ہوتی بھی نہیں. اٹ واز سمر, بہت مشکل تھی. وہاں گئے اور تو وہاں لاڑکانہ بھی گئے. تو وہاں کسی نے کہا کہ بے نظیر وہاں ان دنوں ہوتی تھیں ریسیونگ کنڈولینسز وغیرہ. تو وہاں کسی نے کہا کہ آپ بی بی سے کنٹینمنٹ کرتے ہیں. آئی ڈونٹ نو ہے ایسے کیا ہے, ہم تو اپنے لیے آئے تھے. تو ایک سندھی جرنلسٹ تھا کوئی, ہی پوچھ می کہ لوگ ایک گروپ جا رہا ہے, ایک آ رہا ہے, آ رہا ہے. ایک وہ وہاں ایک وہ چل رہا تھا. اچھا ہم جا کے بیٹھ گئے. تو میں نے کہا کہ आई एम फ्रॉम डॉन. तो डॉन से वैसे लोग खुश नहीं रहते थे बिकॉज ऑफ हमें Harun's owned Dawn, and Mahmoud Harun was Ziaul Haq's interior minister.
Yes.
तो उनका नहीं कोई कोई नथिंग ऑन रिकॉर्ड, वही होता था कि था. तो मैंने कहा नहीं मैं तो आई राइट कराची डायरी. सामिया वो इधर आओ इधर आओ इधर आओ, ही राइट्स कराची डायरी. एंड देन आई वाज सो फ्लैटर्ड. आई मीन शी रिकॉर्ड सेंटेंसेस फ्रॉम माय प्रीवियस कॉलम्स.
Wow.
उसने कहा ये. एंड देन ऑफ कोर्स उसके बाद कराची में जो आए.
And I wanted you to tell people listening in about how you used to write about Martin Luther King's assassinate death.
Yes. Like of course. There was
Which
a
was
time
on the
when they
same
said
day
they don't have
as
to
Bhutto.
mention.
Yeah.
So I discovered that Martin Luther King was assassinated on the 4th of April. And going further, Martin Luther King was a Capricorn like Bhutto.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Yes. So I use that. I have a dream. I mean, when you can't talk about Bhutto, you can talk about someone who was assassinated on the 4th of April and who had a dream and who inspired people. So those are the things that I...
Do you remember as news editor, what were the things you were not allowed to write about?
Oh, very interesting. Like 2 persons killed in Nawab Shah, not to go. That became a source of information. We didn't know 2 persons were killed in Nawab Shah.
Right.
Things like that.
Right.
And then some funny things, because there was a period of pre-publication censorship, and I hear people, journalists from that time, telling it, but they overstate the time. I mean, it remained not for a long time pre-publication, where you have to take the page to be printed next day, and somebody would sign it.
Were you news editor when that was happening?
Yes. And then and the story of the blank spaces.
Yes.
It was on just a few days, of course, they realized the blank space would speak louder than, because everybody, if a newspaper is published and there is a blank space or 2 blank spaces, everybody would wonder what was the news that they censored. And then they said, you can't leave blank spaces, you have to replace it with something.
For the जिसका आपने लफ्ज़ किया chalaaki जो आप करते थे writing में, आपको कभी किसी ने, like, did you get into trouble in any way? Were you told not to do it again?
No, in fact, I had some admirers, within quotes, in the government. And I must say that Mahmoud Harun was very, very happy. I mean, Mahmoud Harun had told, they would complain to him, some government people. And he had said that I wouldn't want to say anything to 2 persons in my organization, because I know that I trust them, Razia and Ghazi. I would let them do what they do.
Quite an honor.
Yes,
You're referring to
it was.
Razia Bhatti, who then later created
Razia, of course, Razia was in Herald,
Yes.
and I was in Dawn, and
Yes.
we were in the same building.
Yes.
In fact, there was an episode, I don't know if it is worth recalling here, कि हेरल्ड में आर्टिकल्स जो छपते थे, तो जुहैर एक साहब होते थे, बहुत ही बाद में वाइट पेपर्स के लिखने में भी वो जॉ के ग्रुप में गए, विद IH बर्नी. देवर भुट्टो से बहुत शदीद उनकी मुखालफत और एक तरह की हेट्रेड थी. तो उन्होंने एक आर्टिकल लिखा, वाई भुट्टो फेल. ये दिस वाज इन द अर्ली मंथ्स. जुलाई 77 में भुट्टो को डिपोज किया, मार्शल लॉ लगा. दिस वाज आई थिंक सितंबर और अक्टूबर. हेरल्ड में ये आर्टिकल छपा उनका, वाई भुट्टो फेल। तो मैंने रज़िया से कहा कि रज़िया कि तुमने छाप दिया, ये उसने लिखा है वाई भुट्टो फेल, डोंट यू थिंक इट्स ऑल्सो इम्पोर्टेंट वाई डिड ही राइज एंड विल ही राइज अगेन, तो तुम लिख दो। तो मैंने लिखा द भुट्टो फिनोमेनन, वाई डिड ही राइज एंड विल ही राइज अगेन। तो वो बहुत तफसील से था कि वो कैरिस्मेटिक लीडरशिप, उसमें बल्कि एक आध चीज़ ऐसी थी जो बेनज़ीर ने शिकायत भी की बाद में मुझसे उसकी, बिकॉज आई सेड कि उनको ये कहा जाता है कि उनकी माँ हिंदू थी या इलेजिटिमेट थी। तो मैंने कहा ये क्या मतलब, बहुत से इलेजिटिमेट ऐसे हैं जिन्होंने ग्रेट काम, बहुत बड़े काम किए। एंड देन आई डिस्कवर्ड a book. I had discovered a book on British prime ministers, The Fiery Chariot. उसमें when writing about British prime ministers of a certain period, this author, I think Ironmonger, discovered that a large number of them had some childhood bereavement.
Oh.
And that the same, that classic Greek myth of
It shaped their
subjects.
thinking.
And how they became and I and there was an element of self-destruction kind of thing, how they flying too close to the sun kind of thing. So that was, I also used that. Now uh, uh, because it was about Bhutto, it was with these two and two other articles, one written by I think Salim Asmi, one by Bashir, were printed in a small kind of supplement and distributed on behalf of the government. Uh, the Herald publications people, they did it. And one day there was a call from Rawalpindi that Ziaul Haq wanted to meet us. Meet Razia, me, and Zuhair, the writers of those articles. And we were very, very intrigued by it. And we kept wondering what would he say? Would he discuss Bhutto? What? So we flew to Islamabad, went to had a session with him. And it was such a frivolous kind of encounter. It was such a silly encounter in a sense. We were there and said, so we were introduced and he asked Razia, so you are the editor? She said, yes. Are you related to Harun? She said, no. Oh, so how did you become the editor? This is how it began. And then we thought something serious. General Mujib was there also with us, and the secretary, information secretary, was being changed. I think the incoming one was also a civil servant. And then he said, and the book was, there was a coffee table book on Pakistan there, from Bhutto's time. And he said, look at this book. It's so full of one man. I would like you as a team to redo it. So we said, we'll think about it. We came out, and Razia and I, and I think this was Basir Ashraf, we told General Mujib, no, we have nothing to do with it. We can't do it. Zuhair became friends with them, and I think that's how the white paper.
So there were no directives or nothing
no,
about the
no,
work you were doing, reporting.
No. He accepted our refusal to be part of it.
And nothing about going back and what you should write about in the paper and the magazine. Nothing.
No. I was chosen to cover Ziaul Haq's state visit to China and North Korea
Oh, wow.
on behalf of Dawn, which I did. And we were there for 10 days and we never had a conversation. I never had a conversation with Ziaul, like exchange of words. That we were there as a group, journalists, and sometimes we sat together, but I never.
Since we're talking about Zia, the Zia years for the press were marked, or not just for the press, for civil society. There were midnight knocks on the door, there was imprisonment without trial, there were military courts, there were lashings. What did those days look like in hindsight?
Difficult days, and the People's Party's activists were selected for this kind of treatment. There were people who were sent to the fort in the infamous villa. Yes, all that was happening, and we knew about it, and there was an element of apprehension, fear, but not as the kind of fear that we have now. Zia wanted to pretended, always pretended to be a pious Muslim kind of thing. Uh, he planted the seeds, but of course it was much later than Salman Taseer was assassinated. It was much later than that army public school happened. It was much later than all these blasphemy kind of atrocities were. Those seeds were planted by Zia. The, but they flourished later.
How does that time compare with times today where, with the arrests of PTI members and trial of PTI members, and once again, we're hearing about military court,
Yes.
in this case, that former Prime Minister Imran Khan may be tried?
Yes, because it's the army. The real power in this country has always been the army. And then it is for them to decide how severe would they be, what kind of policies they would. I mean, it is almost military ruling this country.
Is it fair to compare media censorship today with the 70s and 80s?
It's the entire scene is so different. I mean, I think it's the apple and oranges kind of situation. With the social media, so many private channels, with an entire digital world with its dark web and whatever. I mean, the entire business of communicating ideas and sending messages and sharing information has changed, totally changed.
But there is a media blackout on Imran Khan.
Oh yes, now of course. But even then, I mean, on Twitter, they are watching that also.
Yes,
Because
that's the
because
difference.
when you have technology, it works both ways.
My final question to you is, I've spoken to a lot of journalists who, um, of course, they are outraged that Imran Riaz is still missing, and they think he's a Pakistani citizen who should be produced before court and made to face any charges and fight those charges. However, there's a lot of discomfort around really standing up for him because many people do not think of him as a journalist and think he is more a party spokesperson and was not fair in his reporting.
Yeah.
The one big difference is that in the times that you describe, journalists seem to come together.
Yes.
And now there's so many fissures within the community, and I bring up Imran Riaz as an example of that. What does this tell you about the state the state of journalism itself in the country?
It's a very toxic kind of polarization in this country at this time. For instance, शुरू से मुझे इमरान खान जो है एक अजाब लगता था. And it goes back to the World Cup, that 1992 glory. I was editor of the news at that time, and we had this 8 column headline, "We Rule the World," kind of having one. But the speech he made on that occasion was the beginning of my dislike for him. And then I been watching him, his politics, the kind of alliances he made, the kind of people who joined his party, and the entire journey that he has made. And I still think that he he's not good for the country. He was not good. He was a project of the army initially, of course, and the whole thing. We need not go into that. But people like us would still speak for the human rights.
What if you were back in the newsroom today, whether as a columnist, although you, of course, continue your columns for the news, but as a columnist or leading as an editor? How do you think you would manage things today?
I wouldn't want to be there. One, the newspapers are losing influence. And then in within the entire kind of information environment, a newspaper has a very small role to play.
Is there anything I should have asked you that I didn't? Is there anything you would like to say?
No, I worry about what I call the de-intellectualization of the Pakistani society. I worry about lack of any rational debate, and also there is no environment in which such a debate would be possible. I worry about the rise of the influence of two, religion and the military, and they belong together. So I didn't tell you something that's become some kind of. I have always been a pessimist.
Oh,
Yes.
you really don't come across like that,
That's
though.
what I say. I'm the most cheerful pessimist you can buy.
You're so cheerful.
Yes, I'm a pessimist. I don't have much hope of redemption in this country. Uh, and the analogy, which has become very familiar and has now been, I mean, everybody can refer to analogy of Titanic. The Titanic is sinking, but the band is playing. So we are the band. We'll keep on doing what we think is the right thing to do. But we know that we are losing influence. Nobody listens to us. Nobody reads. When I meet someone who has read my columns, I say, "Oh, you may be one of the 28 persons who have read my column."
I am one of them.
It makes 29. So, they don't. They don't. It doesn't matter to them. There's no sense of history. Look at the young people.
Is that why you think on social media, for example, everybody uses the word एक लफ्ज़ बहुत इस्तेमाल हो रहा है
Fake
कि ये
news,
no,
disinformation,
that this is unprecedented. मेरा ये जो है ना कि ये unprecedented violence हो रहा है PTI workers के खिलाफ, इस तरह media censorship नहीं थी. मैंने इसी तौर पे आपसे बात करना चाह रही थी कि आपने तो देखा है.
हमने देखा है. वही मैं कहता हूँ कि there was more hope during those very dark days of Zia than there is now. तब उम्मीद लगती थी हमें. खतरात भी थे, तकलीफें भी उठाई लोगों ने. अब तो ये टेलीविजन के आने के बाद और एंकर्स और इतने पैसे इधर से उधर से लोग कर रहे हैं. We have lived through difficult times financially also. हम लोग जो जर्नलिस्ट हुआ करते थे मुश्किल में रहते थे हमेशा. I mean, I remained a journalist mainly because my wife is a working person, has been throughout her, even before we were married, she was a working person. So that's how we could pay for our daughter's education. Otherwise, as a journalist, I couldn't have.
On that depressing note, I'll end, but thank you for speaking to me.